Patricia Dwinell Butler attended Emory Law School under the insistence of her father and the protest of her mother. She found it much easier and to her liking than she expected and graduated in 1931. Unfortunately, this was the depths of the Depression, a hard time for anyone just starting out in a new profession, especially a woman. She begins by telling of her acquaintance with Smythe Gambrell and how he was doggedly insistent upon helping her find a job at a time when prospects were especially bleak.
Smythe, of course, taught moot court, at that time. And Smythe just seemed kind of determined to see that the only gal would get a job. And he took me around to more law firms than I can recall now. All of them were so, of course, being introduced by Smythe was the best help that a woman could ask in those days. He was an outstanding lawyer, and he was chief counsel for Eastern Airlines and also for Greyhound Bus. And in almost every case they'd say, Miss Collins, we'd like to hire you, we really would. But we couldn't face our clients if we told them that we were paying a woman lawyer in a day when men are walking the streets with families that they have to support. And I'm afraid we just aren't going to be able to do anything for you. Well, Smythe didn't give up. He finally got me a job with the American Law Institute, annotating the restatement of contracts, which I did under the guidance of Dean Hilke. And of course, Dean Hilke, but mainly Professor Quillian. We worked together on that. Well, that was my half-time job. I would go out in the afternoon to the college and annotate. But in the morning, I was doing another job, which Smythe had also gotten for me. And that was in the Atlanta Legal Aid Organization, where I was employed in the morning down in the Fulton County Courthouse. No pay. Mr. Thrift was the general counsel down there, and Mr. Thrift, always kind, said that he really hated the fact that I was coming there every day and wasn't even making enough money to buy myself lunch. So one day he decided that he would bring up the fact to the board and see if he couldn't just get me a small stipend. Mr. Tye was the chairman of the board of the firm of Tye, Thompson, Tye. And when Mr. Thrift asked that the board authorize a small payment to me, Mr. Tye, I'm told, put his fist down and said he would have no part of it. And he rose, put his hat on, and walked out, and they never had any word from Mr. Tye after that. He resigned from the board. He did not feel that he was carrying out his responsibilities if he was paying a woman $40 a month, which is what I finally got, to come in every day. When in 1934, Smythe, never giving up, was in Washington on some business, and he was told by Ashley Sellers, who had then come to the Department of Justice himself, that was a short time before, that there were some opportunities for lawyers in the department if Smythe knew of any. And Smythe said he would give that some thought. And not too long afterwards, he let Ashley know that he had a candidate. And not mentioning that the candidate was male or female, Ashley said, well, he'd be interested. So I was in, this was near, I guess it was just before Christmas because I had gone to Toronto. Well, it was interesting enough to me, I changed my plans to come back to Atlanta by way of Washington. And I was, Ashley took over, and I stayed at the Mayflower Hotel overnight, and Ashley said, now I'm going to have a little, this was late 1934, I think. He said, I'm going to have a little trouble making an appointment for you because there are a number of cases that are pending in the Supreme Court, and the man that you'll have to see is appearing in the court. These were the early cases in the Roosevelt administration, the AAA case, the Schechter case, and all those cases. And a man named Stevens was the head of the antitrust division. And Ashley was in the antitrust division, so that's where my possibility lay, in the antitrust division. So I stayed at the Mayflower one night, and then I stayed at the Mayflower another night, and Ashley said, "I've got to get you out of that hotel." He said, "It's too expensive for you staying there." He said, "I'll see what I can do." And finally, between one thing or another, I got in to see Mr. Stevens. Well, I had a delightful interview right now, looking at me and saying, "What makes you think you'd like to come to the Department of Justice?" And I didn't want to say I had nothing to do with it. I just said, "Well, it's the main law office of the country. It's the lawyer for the president. I think that would be just fine." So I guess we had about a 30-minute interview. And when I left, I got no assurance from him or anything. He just said it was pleasant to have met me, and I said the same. And I went on home to Atlanta. And my mother said, "Well, that's that. You can forget that now. You don't have to worry about that." Well, not too long afterwards, I guess it must have been, it was maybe a month afterwards, I got a telegram asking me to report 1 week later. Well, I don't remember how I handled that, but my mother and I drove from Atlanta up to Washington, and we scurried around. We stayed at the Mayflower again, and we scurried around to see what I could do in the way of residence of some kind.
Well, Ms. Butler went on to become a lifelong resident of Washington. Aside from her work in the Department of Justice, she also was actively involved with the National Trust and helped found the Supreme Court Historical Society. She tells a story here of Chief Justice William Rehnquist.
He was the head of the office that I left in the Department of Justice, the Office of Legal Counsel. And he went over to the court from the Office of Legal Counsel. And incidentally, at that time, the staff got together. It was a little surprise to us because he hadn't been in the department very long. And when he got the call, the nomination to go to the court, we were kind of surprised. And someone said to me, "Now I think you ought to we want to give him a robe when he leaves the department. I think you ought to do it." And I had no idea in the world how you bought a robe for a justice of the Supreme Court. But I finally, after asking around, found out where I'd get one, and I bought the robe. And not too long ago, I said to him, "You know, I got that first robe for you. You still using it?" And he said, "Well, being of a frugal nature, I wouldn't be surprised if it's still one that I'm using."
We asked Ms. Butler if she had any advice for our current students.
Well, I think that the thing that helps a young lawyer most is to get involved. Just get involved. Get to meet people, talk to people, find out what's going on, find out where you can put your oar in and be useful. And the old idea of a lawyer in a swivel chair sitting in an office with the sun shining in the window is just out of date now. You've just got to get into organizations, you've got to get to know people, and see if you can be useful, see where you can be useful.